Google announced today various strategies to help consumers act in a more sustainable and eco-friendly way. Now, this is all quite light-touch stuff, but considering how big a role these companies play in our daily lives, what are their responsibilities and can big tech help us go green? So, Maryam, just to illustrate some of what they're doing, Google have said that they're giving a green badge to lower emission flights and eco-friendly hotels. They've also got features like maps defaulting to eco-friendly routes. Is this a good idea? Is it going to help us be nudged towards making more sustainable choices in our lives?
Giving people more information and more data is always going to make it easier for them to make informed choices. I think that transparency is absolutely great. And I think that people will be able to make those choices in an informed way now. But whether that putting this responsibility on the individual entirely is a good idea, I think it's not. I think we need to also understand that this is a whole society that needs to act together. So if this helps people do their part, that's great, but we can't stop here.
We can't, so how much further should we go, do you think, then? I mean, you think saying that these big tech companies should do more?
Well, I think that the big tech companies do have one really big responsibility, which is about addressing misinformation about climate change. That is something that they have in their control and has a massive impact on the way that individuals understand the climate crisis. And we've seen the influence these companies have had in things from elections to vaccines. And so they need to take that responsibility when it comes to information on climate change as well.
And it's interesting, actually, I think, because Google did say today that in a bid to combat misinformation, users who head to Google search with questions about climate change, they'll be shown data from sources like the United Nations as well as trusted news sources on that issue. That's what they've said. Jerome, what's your take on this? What role can these big companies play in helping us change our behaviour?
This is a very encouraging step to see from Google and tech companies in general, but I think that also we have to ensure that we aren't placing the blame, just like Maryam said. Everyday people did not cause the climate crisis. It was the companies and socioeconomic systems that created the climate crisis in the first place. So they must be the first and foremost to basically break the solutions. And that looks like them changing their logistics and their supply chain, not telling everyday people that they should make small incremental choices. It's and both. And I think that's really good, because also I think Google has made some steps, but we need to see much more when it comes to the next decade of mobilizing on a massive scale to avert the worst impacts.
So very briefly, you think they do have a responsibility? They're not just companies who are free to do what they like?
Oh, they have an absolute responsibility to protect people because they create services that pollute the environment. So if they're continuing to do that, they have to say, we're going to switch to make sure we aren't continuing to harm people and communities. It's 100% on them to change. And as a small impact people have.
Sorry to cut you off, Jerome, but we are out of time. Jerome Foster, Maryam, Pasha, really good to see you both. Thanks very much indeed.